In the icy wilderness of the Ural Mountains, deep in the heart of Soviet Russia, a tragedy unfolded in February 1959 that continues to baffle investigators, scientists, and conspiracy theorists to this very day. 9 experienced hikers, young, skilled, and full of promise, ventured into the frozen expanse of the northern Urals. None of them would ever return alive. What rescuers discovered in the weeks that followed was so disturbing, so inexplicable, that even decades later, no single theory can fully explain it. The event would become known as the Dyatlov Pass Incident, named after the group's leader, Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old engineering student from the Ural Polytechnic Institute. The team consisted of 9 hikers, 7 men and 2 women, all seasoned in mountain expeditions. They had set out in late January 1959, aiming to reach the remote peak of Otorten Mountain. Their journey began smoothly. They kept diaries, took photographs, and appeared in good spirits as they traversed snow-covered forests and frozen rivers. But on February 1st, they made camp on the slopes of Kholat Syakhl, a name that eerily translates from the local Mansi language to Mountain of the Dead. They were never seen alive again. When the hikers failed to return as scheduled, a search operation was launched on February 20th. Days later, rescuers found the group's tent, abandoned, half buried in snow, and mysteriously slashed open from the inside. All their belongings, warm clothes, boots, food, even their skis, were still inside. It was as if the hikers had fled into the blizzard in a blind panic, wearing little more than their undergarments. Soon after, searchers discovered the first 2 bodies under a large cedar tree, barefoot and wearing only their underwear. Between the tent and the tree lay the remains of 3 more hikers, as though they had been trying desperately to crawl back to camp. The last 4 bodies weren't found until months later, buried beneath the snow in a nearby ravine. It was their condition that truly deepened the mystery. 2 of the victims had massive chest fractures, 1 had a crushed skull, and another was missing her tongue and eyes. Yet there were no external wounds to match the internal trauma, as if some immense force had struck them without leaving a trace. Even Soviet investigators were at a loss. The official report concluded only that the hikers had died from a compelling natural force. But what kind of force could cause such bizarre injuries, and make 9 trained mountaineers tear through their tent and flee barefoot into sub-zero temperatures? When Soviet investigators reached the site in late February 1959, they were immediately struck by the bizarre contradictions before them. The hikers' tent had been cut open from the inside, suggesting the group had fled in terror, but fled from what remained unclear. The surrounding snow was littered with footprints leading into the forest. Barefoot or wearing only socks, in temperatures that dropped below -30 degrees Celsius -22 degrees Fahrenheit. Inside the tent, investigators found half-eaten food, warm clothing, and all of the hikers' equipment. There were no signs of a struggle, no indication of an intruder. The tent itself was pitched properly, meaning they hadn't been attacked while setting up camp. Something had terrified them after they had settled in for the night. Autopsies on the bodies only deepened the mystery. 3 hikers had fatal internal injuries that resembled the kind caused by a car crash or explosion, yet none had external wounds. Another hiker had major skull damage, and one woman, Ludmila Dubanina, was found missing her tongue, eyes, and part of her lips. Forensics ruled out animal scavenging. The cuts appeared clean and precise. Equally strange was the discovery that several of the victims' clothes were radioactive. Traces of radiation were detected on their garments, though the source could not be identified. Soviet authorities downplayed the finding, but it fueled endless speculation about military involvement or secret weapons testing. Witnesses from a nearby village later reported seeing strange glowing orange orbs in the sky on the night of the tragedy, a claim that added an eerie new dimension to the case. Could the hikers have witnessed something they weren't supposed to see? Or were these lights related to natural phenomena like ball lightning or missile tests? The Soviet investigation was abruptly closed in May 1959, just 3 months after it began. The official report concluded that the hikers died as a result of a compelling natural force they were unable to overcome. No further explanation was offered. All records were classified and sealed for decades. Rumors spread quickly. Whispers of KGB involvement, aliens, paranormal activity, and secret nuclear experiments. Even those closest to the hikers refused to accept the official line. Something had happened that night on Kholat Syakhl. Something so strange that even the Soviet government couldn't or wouldn't explain it. For decades, the Dyatlov Pass incident was shrouded in secrecy, buried under Soviet bureaucracy and censorship. Families of the victims were given little information, and witnesses were warned not to discuss the case. It wasn't until the late 1980s, after the fall of the Soviet Union, that classified files were finally released, reigniting public fascination and speculation around the world. Hundreds of theories have since emerged, each trying to explain the hikers' horrifying final moments. Some point to an avalanche, arguing that a sudden shift of snow forced the group to flee in panic. Yet experts counter that the slope was too shallow for a true avalanche and that the tent was still partially standing when found, evidence that rules out a full snow slide. Others believe the hikers may have stumbled into a secret Soviet weapons test, possibly involving parachute mines or experimental radiation sources. This could explain the strange internal injuries, the radioactivity, and the glowing lights seen in the sky. If the group had been caught in classified military activity, the government would have had every reason to cover it up. Then there are more speculative explanations. UFO encounters, Yeti attacks, or psychological breakdowns caused by infrasound, low-frequency vibrations generated by wind patterns that can induce panic and disorientation. Each theory sounds far-fetched, yet none can be fully dismissed, because none explain everything. In 2019, the Russian government reopened the investigation, 60 years after the tragedy. The official conclusion, released in 2020, stated that the hikers likely died due to a slab avalanche, a smaller, localized collapse of snow that forced them to escape their tent into deadly conditions. While this explanation satisfied some, many researchers remain unconvinced. The mystery, they argue, is simply too complex to be reduced to one event. What makes the Dyatlov Pass incident so haunting is not just the unanswered questions, but the image of 9 young adventurers, frozen in time. Their journals filled with laughter, their photos showing friendship and courage, unaware that their final night would become one of history's most enduring enigmas. To this day, hikers who visit the Ural Mountains leave small memorials near the site where their tent once stood, a silent tribute to Igor Dyatlov and his team, who walked into the frozen unknown and never returned. The Dyatlov Pass remains a symbol of nature's power, human curiosity, and the chilling reminder that some mysteries may never be fully solved.